La 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 la. La 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 la. They say our love won't pay the rent before it's earned. Our money's always spent. Well, I don't know. We ain't got no plot. Still, I'm sure of all the love we got. Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe. Some people say your hair's too long. I don't care. With you, I can't go wrong. So put your little hand in my there ain't no mountain or valley we can climb. Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
This is Army Sergeant Bob Martin on the scene of Beat Club in Bremen, Germany. And I have with me today, God bless, Tiny Tim.
Going through the city for almost 10 years, 13 years at least, being as a freak, it was really a challenge that I've tried to overcome. Because in all fairness, by 1962, every friend of mine and every relative had given up on me. They would come into my mother's house and just shake their head when they saw me and walk the other way.
That's amazing.
Well, that's why I believe you're talking to the biggest miracle perhaps ever in the history of show business, because while there were people who did suffer hard and starved and went through all this, they never had to go through the odds of being a freak and making it at the same time. I don't know anyone who has done it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tiny.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and all New York City's own Tiny Tim.
Dear Lord, today I had an awful day. I am the biggest star in the country. What I have is desired by almost everyone, and yet, oh blessed Lord, my soul is dwelling in hell, and I cry out for help, oh Jesus.
When you're strange, faces come out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name.
Tiny Tim's on next.
Who is this? Where did he come from? Who dropped him here?
There's sexual ambiguity, political ambiguity, ethnic ambiguity. It's all ambiguous with Tiny Tim.
I feel like someone from Mars coming to Earth.
He took all the male, female, adult, child, and just kind of put it into a blender and hit the button. And then I immediately thought, that's the man I want to marry.
I treasure the grace of her sweet smiling face, the Bible my mother left for me.
Tiny's widow is here. My name is Johnny Pineapple. I was Tiny's closest friend. And we're actually in the middle of shooting a documentary. Oh my God. So this is very exciting that in the time of your loss, you know, are here for a funeral. But God bless you, decided to come down and just see where Tiny is resting. Let me show you. Come on in. He was born Herbert Boutros Khaury. And of course, everybody knows him as Tiny Tim.
Is he from here?
Good question. Actually, he was a New York City guy, born and raised in New York City, 1932.
When you look at where Herbert Khaury begins and Tiny Tim ends, nothing was ever normal from top to bottom, from start to finish. So why should his birth be normal?
If they had waited to do that cesarean another minute or two, he would have lived out his life in a rehabilitation hospital in a wheelchair or in a bed.
His mother, Tilly, is from a Russian Jewish family, and his father, Boutros, is from a Lebanese Christian family. That was unheard of, especially a Jew marrying an Arab in those days was pretty unusual.
He had a violent relationship with Mom and Dad. They had him, they took care of him. I don't think they ever loved him.
Tiny described to me many times, my parents' room had no door. There was no door on their room, no door. And he was very agitated. And he couldn't leave his room without walking into their private space.
He had Russ Colombo, Bing Crosby, Arthur Godfrey, and his ukulele. He would play that 30 times a night, and that would turn him on so.
Like a ship at sea, I'm just lost in a fog. My mind is hazy, my thoughts are blue. Yes, I'll always be kind of lost in a fog without you. Waiting night and day, like a bump on a log. I'm going crazy. What should I do? Help me find my way, 'cause I'm lost in a fog without
His parents were elderly, and they really tolerated him, but they didn't understand him, so he locked himself in his room and did his imagination with another life. He invented his reality. He invented people in his loneliness to take him away from that spot.
Had a violent clash with my mother. She broke my records and my mandolin. I was thrown out of the house and stood in the cold rain for 3 hours.
It was a particularly rough time in his life. His parents are getting ready to throw him out of the house. He wasn't making any money. He decided he had to do something. So he took the subway down to the financial district, sat on the sidewalk with a sign, "Help save classical music."
lucky April shower. It was the most convenient door.
The first time I saw Herbert was when he was standing on the street with his ukulele. He really enjoyed it.
They got mad because he was so damn weird. And all they wanted to do was kill him. Throw eggs at him, garbage cans, anything.
Another wasted day of my life has passed. All in all, today was just another day of thinking. Will I be a success in singing? What is my future? However, my main objective is to be self-confident with girls. My father insisted today that I see a psychiatrist, but I said, Jesus Christ is my doctor.
What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual.
Tiny was what I call half gay, which means that his problem had more to do with identity than with sexual preference. And he had, when he was young, a relationship for about 5 years with a guy. And it was just a romanticized friendship.
Bobby Gonzalez came in, praised the Lord. And of course, I was admiring his body, muscles, using myself as a punching bag, which is wonderful.
This is like good and bad points about Bobby Gonzalez from the diaries.
Bobby Gonzalez, good points. His kind heart, his sincerity, his honesty, his tender, gentle love for the poor, his always telling the truth, his warm smile of love.
Well, what is the bad point?
Bad points, 0.
You didn't know that he saw so much in you.
No. No, I really didn't.
No. What do you think about it?
I'm a little shocked.
Bobby Gonzalez came. He said he was sleeping over. He took his pants and shirt and glasses off. I closed the light and also went to bed with him. I massaged his back. He fell asleep. Dad came into my room, put the lights on, and almost blew a fuse when he saw Bob, who was still asleep. I tried to assure him, but finally Ma came in, saw Bob, and boom, that was it. Out he went, and I got hit, yelling, etc. I went to the pastor to tell him my views on my belief in Christ. He told me to see a psychiatrist. Then I was kicked out of the Catholic Church for being a smart aleck. Everyone is against me.
People are queer, they're always crowing,
His biggest conviction was, you got to do something to get noticed.
Address themselves this way.
There's a great photo of Tiny Tim by Diane Arbus that really has the genesis of the look. It's beautiful and shocking. It has so many elements of what really makes something last. It's a unique beauty, his character. It's not typical beauty by any means, but it's beautiful in that he created it, you know? It's a miracle, really.
The fellows kidded me about my sissy-ish appearance, but the girls looked at me.
And then one day he says he prayed to Jesus and he woke up with the high voice.
Today I tried my new style at the Old Alliance Club. It worked. Praise the blessed Lord Jesus, they screamed. I must sing the sissy way. God told me to sing the sissy way. Thanks ever so much for the magnetism on stage that you've given me. Today I had to be taken to safety by 2 cops and a fireman. I believe, however, this is the start of a great success.
So Tiny basically went through the 50s playing at all these amateur singing contests and you know, all these little dive bars, maybe making a few dollars here and there, but actually didn't land his first steady gig until 1959, and that was at Hubert's Museum and Flea Circus, which was essentially a freak show located in Times Square.
I don't like to use the word freaks, so I'll just use the oddities of nature. And the main act was fleas dance to music.
How do you train them?
Well, we have to form habits in them. There is Napoleon Bonaparte with his cannons and Caesar with their Roman chariots. All right, boys?
And he found himself billed alongside the Armless Wonder, the Handless Sharpshooter, Elephant Man, and whatever else they had in there. And he was billed as Larry Love, the Human Canary.
Open the page of a book and o'er brings back a memory of days of yore. Only a rose leaf that lingers.
It was no doubt humiliating in some way. I mean, people came through not to enjoy these people, but to gawk at them.
a lot of the prescribed routes for us to live and interact with one another were considered artificial, considered mannered, as if people were walking around with masks and playing roles. And this is the way women are supposed to behave. And this is what being a man is about.
There had to be a break. It like a new generation was coming in with completely different ideas.
People who were reaching to be something individual were valued and appreciated for being just that. And in that sense, Tiny Tim was one of those people, and therefore he was a trailblazer.
Praise the Lord. I was mentioned in the Village Voice under the name Tiny Tim.
We have different kinds of music for you right now, a different kind of personality. This gentleman is very, very quickly picking up a following, and let's have a great big hand for Mr. Tiny Tim.
I was wandering by this club in the West Village, and in there I saw Tiny Tim, who cooked my brain.
There was some reading, some event, and lights went out.
I hope you'll approve of this song, my dear friends, because if you don't, I'm very sorry, because these are one of these numbers that touch me at this time of night.
And in that silence and darkness, suddenly you could hear ukulele.
When I have a brand new hairdo and my eyelashes are in curl, why I float like the clouds on it. I enjoy being a girl.
Who is this? Where did he come from? Who dropped him here? But he's not from here. That voice is also not from here.
Who'll enjoy
being a guy, having a goyle like me.
Speaking with the world's greatest entertainer today, Mr. Dylan, and his wanting me for a movie, Lord willing. Thank you for the wonderful talent he sees in me. To be a close friend of him, to stay and sleep in his house, well, this was too much. And to top it all, he is paying me for it. Thanks, as I also sang for his beautiful wife and kids.
Dylan was sort of interested in doing a film. I kind of was involved in it, in which we were going to do a circus, and Tiny Tim was going to be the guy with the top hat and the whip. People were talking about it a lot, but it never got off the ground. He was a complete outlaw, a complete outlaw. So it made him very vulnerable, but very interesting. You really liked him a lot.
Thanks for a great night at the scene where the in-crowd goes. I will be a star, the biggest star of our times.
when you're strange, faces come out.
The scene was one of those places where all the musicians would get together and see another musician.
Remembers your name, what is it? When you're strange. Oh, they're playing our campaign.
Everybody thought that he was just a homeless guy who wandered into the club, you know. You know, we're watching him and the audience is kind of aghast.
Oh, I know you're impatient waiting for it. Well, I have to find the words for you.
Suddenly, you know, the audience, all of us sort of at the same time, realized this guy's not kidding. this guy's for real. You know, then they started laughing in sort of a different way.
Gold will change you like Mephisto. Remember this, though. Love makes you a Monte Cristo. King for a day. I may make the world think I'm merry, but I can't hide the truth of myself. So no matter what happens, I must go on acting, acting, acting. Be a Pagliacciolo.
Today, I signed a contract with Reprise Records, Mr. Frank Sinatra's company. They want me in LA on Monday for recordings.
You're going now to the West Coast, to Hollywood?
Yes, Bob, thanks again. Can I just say one last thing? Nighty-night and all in Radio Land. It's time to say good night.
Oh, Tiny Tim, I hope that Hollywood doesn't make you affected. You won't go Hollywood on us, will you? Bye-bye, Tiny.
On the good ship, lollipop, it's a sweet trip to a candy shop where bonbons play on the sunny beach of Peppermint Bay.
Hello, my dear friends. Well, here I am on record at last. And it feels so wonderful to be here with you on my first album.
I'm so happy, oh, happy-go-lucky me.
We put out the God Bless Tiny Tim album. The timing was right for it. People were ready to accept him.
We didn't treat him cartoony. We treated him like a real pop singer, like Frank Sinatra, a real singer, like a real artist.
Tiny showed up at our office one day with a shopping bag and with his ukulele underneath his arm, and I did not know what to make of it. The only thing he kept doing was this, oh, Mr. de Blasio, thank you. And I couldn't figure out. And I was told by Roy, said to me, now listen, this one is crazy. And I said, well, you know, they're all sort of crazy, every one of them. He said, no, you don't understand. This one is truly wacko. I said, wacko? And he said, wacko.
I'm right here to stay where I want to pray.
I was in the middle of a writer's meeting, and Richard Perry walked in with Digby Wolf and said, we want to introduce you to somebody. And I said, not now. I've got the room full of writers. I don't have time for that right now. They said, we must insist. And they walked in with Tiny Tim and the shopping bag. And I said, what the hell?
I got a surprise for you. Oh, you're kidding. Oh, you got a goodie for me so early in the evening? Wait till you see this, pal.
So we brought him out on stage, and we introduced it. Dan introduced him to Dick, and Dick had never seen anything like Tiny Tim.
The toast of Greenwich Village in his first appearance anywhere, Tiny Tim.
And NBC said, you can't put this guy on. He's like a freak. I said, he's a big star.
I'll tiptoe through the window, by the window, that is where I'll become tiptoe.
He's a star. Just listen to this. You know the man's a star. Here's my favorite. Watch this. Listen to it. Easy.
That was it. And they fell in love with him.
Once he hit laughing, he was playing everywhere.
This album right here, I understand people like Bob Dylan, Peter, Paul, and Mary have predicted that this next gentleman is going to be the biggest record seller, I guess, of this coming year.
Flowers will stray, will keep the
Thousands of letters poured in to CBS asking, who is this guy? But very quickly, he was on the cover of every major magazine, merchandising was popping up, and God Bless Tiny Tim miraculously pierced the top 10 of the U.S. Billboard charts.
tiptoe through the tulips with me.
It was unlike anything else.
We just thought he was it.
The audience loved him when he walked out there.
After your appearance here, your last appearance here, we received more mail about you than almost anyone else we've ever had on the show.
Oh, thank you out there in television land.
A lot of our fans want to know, how old are you, Tiny?
Oh, Mr. Bella.
Yeah, that old.
I feel so young.
I also know that you admire the astronauts, or was it that you would like to be one?
Well, not really an astronaut, Mr. Cabot. I've always been... It's not an astronaut I'd want to be. I'd love to, to go to the planets and stay there.
The man who made tulips the national flower, Tiny Tim.
There'll always be an England while there's a country lane. Wherever there's a cottage small.
Years ago, I told my parents that one day they would be in the front row when I did the Ed Sullivan Show. No one believed it then. Today, it happened.
Take a bow. Where are your parents? I'd like to have them stand up there.
Welcome to my dream. It now seems real. You're what it needed to make it ideal.
Now, if my mother, for example, were to write you and say that her son wears long hair and sings in a falsetto voice and it bothers her, now what would you write back? Now, assuming that I haven't made the grade.
What is your mother's feeling?
Well, before I made it, she asked who in her family was like it. And then my father asked the same thing because there was no answer to that. So her feelings were quite bad.
Fill your heart with love today. Don't play the game of time. Things that happen in the past happen in your mind. In your mind, only in your mind. In your mind, forget your mind and you'll be free.
As we move into the summer of 1968, Tiny Mania reaches its climax. He tours across the continental U.S., including Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Then he moves across the Atlantic to the U.K. and Europe. Everyone wants to meet him.
Mr. Lennon called up and he said, gee, he'd love to have me at Albert Hall.
Tiny Tim for president or Tiny Tim for queen.
One eye is brown. The other eye is brown.
Sounds strange to say, well, Tiny Tim arrived at a time when the country needed a Tiny Tim. We did, because the world was screwed up, not unlike it is today.
Cars are waiting, windshields wiping, nowhere left to go. Oh, the ice caps are melting. Ho, 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 ho. Oh, the world is drowning to wash away the sin.
The seagull flies in search of land. The children hide beneath the sand while floating toys.
We needed somebody that was that sweet, that vulnerable, and that kind. And Tim walked in there, and he became a national hero.
As I approach the prime of my life, I find I have the time of my life, learning to enjoy at my leisure all the simple pleasures, and so I happily concede.
Thanks for the most fantastic happenings. People stop me wherever I go, and I sign autographs. I am invited to parties with all the great stars of Hollywood and with beautiful girls.
Beautiful girls, walk a little slower when you walk by me. Lingering sunsets, stay a little longer with a
Yes, he was a cartoon character, but that's when you looked at him with the shopping bag. But it wasn't the shopping bag singing, and it wasn't the funny jacket singing. It was Tiny Tim, and what he was, and what he added a magic to it that I had never heard before.
I will stay younger than spring.
Well, you broke it up again, Tiny.
Thank you, Mr. Carson.
That's kind of a Russ Columbo style, huh? Right?
Mixed with Mr. Crosby.
Yeah. Very good. Like you took everybody a little bit by surprise on that one. Right?
He was a great performer, and he was passionate about his music, but he was more passionate about girls.
From the 1st of January to the last day of December, I give a trophy out to the most beautiful girl of the year who I've met. Now, I like to give a lot of trophies out, but of course, I can only give one. Usually, the girl never knows it.
Have you ever thought of replacing the trophy with a ring or marital?
Oh, never, never, because I could never get married.
He'd tell us stories about girls he had crushes on.
Yeah, which was a lot of girls.
And one time he was getting so excited. I don't know if you remember Miss Cleo. He was telling us all about Miss Cleo, who was a showgirl somewhere. And all of a sudden he's going, oh, Miss Cleo, Miss Cleo. And he jumps on the bed on his back and he's kicking his feet with his arms. And it's Miss Cleo. He was going like out of his mind.
And if you can imagine being like 15 years old and seeing it, you know.
I think I was on the 2nd floor, he was on the 3rd, and obviously we were close. He climbed down the balcony, and he snuck in through the sliding glass doors and came into my room. And his road manager, he just kept calling. And he says, I know Tiny is in the room with you. He says, this is not wise. In the meantime, Tiny is saying, don't tell him I'm here. Don't tell him I'm here. I was like, what do I do? But I listened to Tiny. And then he snuck out the same way.
People always thought that, you know, he was some kind of lech. But, you know, really, with us, I mean, he was just like this great. He was great. Like, he never did anything.
Sweet. I thought it was cool. And it could have been something else, but it wasn't. It wasn't. And he was such the gentleman. Always, every time I was with him, always the gentleman.
How many times, realistically, did he get that close to serious legal ramifications?
In certain places, he could have gotten into a lot of trouble just for...
Hey, no kidding.
Just for having her there with no clothes on. Not that he had much choice, since she walked in and took the clothes off without asking him.
Remember in Iowa, Tiny is approached by some, you know,
tell me now,
13, 14-year-old girl in Iowa.
Yeah.
And unbeknownst to Tiny...
She's recording their telephone conversation.
Yes.
And then the dad...
Bingo. Dad gets a hold of it.
Yeah.
Dad goes crazy. But there again was another situation where there could have been serious ramifications.
I don't know whether it's illegal to talk to a 14-year-old girl on the phone. He couldn't get in trouble for that. And this thing like talking on the phone to a girl, depends on what they talked about, but...
He was very sexual.
Oh, Tiny.
I think that Tiny got more titillated by the temptation and the fact that this was sinful, or it was potentially sinful. I hate to think this, but he was probably a little bit of a tortured soul in that way.
Dear Lord, please forgive me for the sin I committed with Miss Candy here at Caesar's Palace, as I spread honey and peanut butter on her body. Miss Tricia, fooled around with Miss Carol, put cold cream on Miss Iris, got wet. Miss Karen might marry Temptations were active in save me from sin. In Jesus' name I pray. I must stop this sin, and I will, with thy strength.
We all felt that he definitely did need an anchor, and hopefully he would find a nice girl, maybe develop a relationship. So when we went on a book tour, she happened to be there at Wanamaker's department store.
I noticed her right away in her gray dress, and as soon as I came up there, my eyes started to swoon. And then I looked at the crowd, I looked back, and there she was again. I looked back, and there she was again, and she was still smiling.
It was a pretty incredible. It was like love at first sight.
Yeah.
I was there, yeah.
And the next time I came back to Philadelphia 2 days later, she came down and she asked me for the address.
She's here now. Miss Vicky.
Dear Tiny Tim, I'm lost without you. I miss you. There's no one but you.
Dear Miss Vicky, thank you so much for sending me the most exciting telegram I have ever received. But I am more lost without you than you will ever be without me.
There's nothing, just
Tiny
nothing
Tim.
without you. There can never, ever be anyone
Dear Miss
but
Vicky,
you.
I am thinking of you more than you will ever think of me. All the silent objects are my witnesses.
Please
This
take
must be
care.
the last time
Miss
I will
Vicky.
ever be separated from you. Thanks again, Tiny Tim.
Vicky, was it love at first sight?
It
was really love at first fright.
No, don't say that. Oh, well, I think so. Don't mind what he said about fright.
Tiny Tim, would you sing us a song that would express how you feel right now?
Oh,
Are you glad?
yes, I sure would.
If you only knew the dreams that I've been dreaming about you all night through. Got the ring and everything is ready. All you have to do is put it on. 1 week, 7 little days. Wish that they were gone.
Points I must remember concerning the marriage situation with Miss Vicky. Give her gifts every day. Glorify her womanhood and praise. Share every secret. Welcome her mother and father. Watch her menstrual cycle. Build her up, especially in public, in front of others. Keep lotions near bed at romantic hours. Not to forget peanut butter, honey, mustard, whipped cream. Dress as a teenager. Eat her constantly. Don't try to change her. Give her freedom.
But I'll be doggone happy when the preacher makes you
Tiny was talking to Johnny Carson, and Johnny said something about, yes, he had a girlfriend, and we're going to get married. And Carson said, so where are you going to get married? He said, well, I don't know. And Carson said, why don't you do it here? And Tiny went, oh, Mr. Carson, oh. And looked around at me, and I thought, oh, this is interesting.
His wedding was such a big event that it produced a brownout.
The night that Tiny was married on the show, highest ratings in the Tonight Show history.
I thought it was going to be a circus. I thought they were going to make fun of him. And I didn't want to see him get married. I couldn't dream of him anymore then.
Before the word reality television, this was reality.
Wait a minute. Am I having my hair cut?
No.
Marilyn,
No, I don't want my hair cut.
No, didn't you promise me to
I don't,
be your
I'm
fan?
sorry. Oh, no. Oh, for my fans, you can keep it curl for them. Oh, no, I didn't know what they were saying.
You aren't even going to get it trimmed for your wedding?
No,
we hardly took any off.
Oh, thank
you won't even notice the difference.
Aren't you
going to let him even it up for us?
Oh, no.
From New York, The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson.
People have thought we've been kidding about Tiny Tim being married on the show, but we are not. It happens tonight.
The Lord bless thee and keep thee this day and unto the end.
me kiss the bride.
Oh, won't you come and love me? Oh, pretty Vicky mine.
When I watched that video of our wedding, and I saw my young self, and I went, oh my gosh, and it all came back, flooding back to me. I had visions in my head of a home with, hardwood floors and matching dishes and children and cooking dinner every night. And that never came to be. I never cooked one dinner ever for him. Our life was on the road in hotels, and that's what he wanted, and that's what he liked.
Here's the rest of the wedding party to come out and say goodnight. I thank you for being with us and letting us televise this tonight. And wish you both much, much happiness. We'll see you tomorrow night. Good night.
Thank you for the greatest day ever. For this evening, I got married for the first time, and the last, I pray, to the most beautiful girl I know, Miss Victoria May Budinger. I pray I can be worthy of her and make her happy.
You've played at the Royal Albert Hall, you've played at Caesar's Palace, you've toured the world, and then Tiny Tim gets married on The Tonight Show, watched by an estimated 40 to 50 million people. What do you do? Where can you possibly go after that?
At this moment, I am the hottest talent in the whole country. I am the toast of the city from Hollywood to New York. I am praised by everyone. And yet, with all the shouting and sinning, my soul is in hell, and I cry out for help, oh Jesus.
And after so many years of making his own decisions, Tiny began to resent people telling him what to do. So he alienated Richard Perry. Richard Perry quit, followed by Ron de Blasio. And Tiny was taken over by less experienced managers who decided to go down the route of branding Tiny Tim and Miss Vicky together as a package.
We'll love each other, dear, forever.
Thank you, as Miss Vicky gave birth to a baby girl early this morning. Also,
thanks as Miss Vicky and the blessed event are doing fine. I can see, looking at them together like that, I can see how I look like both of them. I don't think that I'm proud, and I think the reason why is because from a very young age, I always had negative stories about him from my mother. So because of that, it stuck in my mind. Maybe at times I even felt embarrassed. But now that I'm older, I realize, everyone's different. He was different for his era.
You are the rose of my heart, dear. You are my sunshine too.
He was really good at performing, and that's when he was most comfortable.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock rock. We're going to rock around the clock tonight.
But when he was alone with people, like friends, relatives, he was so uncomfortable. He couldn't really relate to, other people. His experiences as a child with his parents, and it wasn't good. And I don't think he learned, the capacity to love.
You know, he signed a contract with, like, the mob, and they were controlling him.
Tiny definitely more than alluded to that. He would say, I've got the big boys. He called them the big boys.
One of these mafia people and said, okay, that's it, I'm taking you over. I'm your new manager. That was mainly it.
Show business was very mobbed up back then. Of course, they controlled Las Vegas, and vending machines and jukeboxes and nightclubs. They had booking agencies.
Everybody was saying, who is this guy, including the FBI. So they launched an investigation, and they were particularly interested if Tiny was connected to hoodlum associates connected to Frank Sinatra, basically.
Night out at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Mr. Kaufman made gesture of threat when he said, even if your father does not want you to sign, you're gonna. He is very on edge after being in prison for more than a year. I don't know how far my career will go with them, but they do take personal interest in friendship with me and will be the crutch I need to fight temptation.
I got to know them, and they didn't like me. They looked like mobsters. I could hear, he'd be on the phone, and he'd be like, you gotta get rid of her. She's just out for this. Like, he was so mean. He hated me. And Tiny would come to me and tell me these things, like, he said, you're no good, and you just want what you can get, and you just want money. And I'd be like, well, did you stick up for me? Did you tell him that's not true? Well, no. That was really hurtful.
But the standard of morals for woman and man has made it a point that she cannot, while he can. So who is to blame? It's a man. Every time it's a man.
If she gets a divorce, I will never give it to her. The courts may. This ring stays on the finger. I love her now more than I did yesterday. If she wants to be free, then I'll never be free until death do us part.
Sad day. She leaves. Dear Lord, Miss Vicky has left me again. This time she came and told me to my face. She is tired of this marriage. She cried a bit and was amazed that I still could say I love her and am happy with her. I still mean it. I feel sorry for her and the baby. I must now await further developments.
You're in the Guinness Book of Records. Are you aware of that?
Mr. Carson, I tell you, they told me that, but I never looked it up.
The second highest rated television show of all times, next to the man's first walk on the moon, is the night you were married on The Tonight Show. It had the second highest rating, but the marriage hasn't gone that well.
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Carson, that's life. But I can say, but unfortunately, Miss Vicky left again this January, and this time she said goodbye in person. The first time she didn't, she just ran off with somebody else. But at that time, but I'll be waiting. I don't believe in divorce, and of course, if she comes back 20 years from now, fine, under my terms, of course. And basically,
Can I ask what the terms are?
Yes, frankly, some of the terms will be she has to take a blood test.
So during this time, Tiny's management, they were trying, all kinds of new things to sort of jumpstart his career.
Well, we do all benefits, for the police and firemen all over the, New York area, Massachusetts, Connecticut. And we also bring monkeys, chimpanzees, and magical acts with us, and jugglers. And on the road, I've also seen some wonderful talent, like Mr. John McCormick, the toothless opera singer.
Now you're talking.
I considered it a very sad story because the way he was introduced and put immediately like a freak.
They didn't understand his genius, and I think they were into something else that had nothing to do with that, and was actually heartbreaking for me because I knew what he was.
Hello, this is Tiny Tim saying, these are not imitations, but
spirits as I feel they are living in me.
It's a sin to tell a lie.
Depressing thoughts of failure and of being and living in fear and poverty and shame continue. I tried to think of what to do, but no results.
Finally, Tiny's management stops wanting to pay for his hotel room, and Tiny ends up back at 601 West 163rd Street with his mother.
Dear Lord, as I predicted, I came back to live with my mother, where I left to go to Hollywood in November '67. As I look out of my window, all my father's words came back to me, and I really felt what I wasted in the past. And my shame, and my mother's shame in me being back, I believe I have learned my lesson. Lord willing, I will soon be back on top again.
Mammy, Mammy.
This is when he graduated the junior high.
You notice she said junior high.
This is his friend, the immigrant friend.
My cousin.
Oh, he's
My
cousin.
dear cousin Hal Stein, who is now the promotion manager of WKTU FM.
He took a better position than you.
Had a really angry argument with my mother, as she again had a lack of faith in me.
So long, Mother.
The dear fingers, so toilworn for me. Oh, God bless you and keep you.
You know, thus begins, I would say, a very tumultuous decade.
Mr. Gasoline Man, give me some gas. My tank is almost empty, so fill her up fast. Come tiptoe to the gas pumps, fill her up. Give me all you've got till I scream I've had enough. So you met someone who sweat right off your heels. Goody, goody. So you met someone and I know how it feels. Goody, goody.
That, to me, it's amazing he could get there to begin with. It's amazing he could stay there for a year or two. He would have to do things that we can't even imagine to stay there, to keep that being fresh, to keep being on top. He would have had to. I can't imagine what he would have done in the late 70s when disco was the thing. I can't imagine Tiny in the punk rock era.
Dance with me, dance with me, won't you dance with me? If I kiss you in the garden, in the moonlight, will you pardon me? Yeah, you told me.
Miss Jan.
Miss Jan, Mr. Tim's wife.
That's right.
Well, nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
Your life can't possibly be normal.
Well, it really is exciting and very interesting.
I pray for my dear wife, Jan. She is depressed again. I have not done well in recent years. I am helpless to her because of my own problems. Today, Miss Jan met and chatted with Mr. Donald Trump. He spoke nicely about me when he learned she was married to me. I think my wife loves Mr. Trump.
At this point in time, Tiny was willing to pursue pretty much any angle to make a comeback. The closest he ever came was through his work with Australian pop artist Martin Sharp, who invested considerable time and money in Tiny Tim projects.
Don't go throwing down lovers' lane with anyone else but me. Till I come marching home.
Well, it's really going to be a portrait of Tiny. The basis of it is the World Non-Stop Singing record we did at Luna Park.
Cause it's a good day for paying your bills, and it's a good day for curing your ills. Take a deep breath and throw in
The new world heavyweight singing champion, the one and only Mr. Tiny Tim.
And though Tiny did set the world record, the Guinness Book of World Records never recognized the achievement. Martin Sharp's film was never released, and Tiny went back to the States and took a job touring with the circus.
the hell are you? And what are you doing in this house?
I just come to welcome you home, Jill.
Merv?
Marvelous Mervo at your service.
For our very special guest star here under the big top. Truly, one of the entertainment world's most colorful and unique personalities. The one and only, Tiny Tim!
There must be changes in my career. I must make it either in records, movies, or television, or not at all. The way I am handled right now by people who just want to grab any engagement they can from me so they can put $1 in their pocket, even at the loss of the talent you've given me, oh Lord.
Thank you, beautiful Miss Noella, for bringing me out here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what a thrill it is to be here today in beautiful, wonderful...
I'm the first has-been star singer who has ever sung with the circus. Elvis Presley sang with the circus, but that was before he became a star.
You say has-been star. What was it like for you to go up to the top and be married on the Johnny Carson broadcast, and then to do whatever's happened to you, of which I'm not totally familiar?
Great question. It's really down, up, and down.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. It was a great trip, and of course, for 17 years, I've been trying to make it back again.
Yeah. Tim hasn't been doing much television lately, but he has been performing mainly in the circus.
Life seemed to me like a long winter's day. All of my troubles just faded away. You're gone from me, and the summer time's blue. Came autumn sadness, then love brought me you. All day I'm sighing, longing for you. Life's worth the living since I have met you. Each night while dreaming, your face so true faded and left me sighing for you. Faded and left me
Des Moines River rising, flood getting nearer, electricity out, water contaminated. How many lives were made more beautiful because they were broken? God loves you. He's got a plan. I can't do it alone anymore. Get help.
I was 12, and I had 55 pictures of him on my wall. I had always felt like I didn't really belong in this world. And when I was a little kid, I had a fantasy that I was from another planet. And when I saw him, I thought, he's the first person I've ever seen who's from my planet. Well, I hadn't much thought about Tiny for a long time. I'd heard he was getting a divorce. And all of a sudden I realized Tiny travels around and plays small places, and I could meet him if I wanted to. I just called the hotel that was mentioned in the article and invited myself to meet him. He says, "Are you attractive?" And I thought, it's a really inappropriate thing to say. And I thought, you know, I should be angry, but I'm not. It was just awkward and just wrong to say that. But I just wanted to laugh. And I said, I suppose. And he said, are you slim? It was even worse. And I was very thin at the time. And I said, yes. And he goes, well, okay. And we set a time and a place. And then I said, we'll be there. And he goes, who's we? And I said, me and my boyfriend. He goes, oh, honey. And I said, I've waited 26 years to meet you, and I'm going to be there. And he says, all right, and he hangs up on me. And that was our first conversation. And my boyfriend said to me, you're still in love with him. And I said, oh, no. I said, you know, he's old and raggedy looking in the picture. And I said, it's not going to be the same. And he goes, uh-huh, uh-huh. And when I met him, he was to come down from his room at Hotel Fort Des Moines, and we were going to have dinner. I didn't realize at the time how little money he had and what a huge sacrifice it was for him to buy dinner for 2 guests. And he says, are you Miss Sue? And I said, yes. And he says, I'm Tiny Tim. And I thought, yes. I knew that. He's looking me up and down, and he's giving me this look like, you really aren't that attractive. And I'm looking at him like, you are so old. And you look like a stuffed animal that some little kid has been playing with a lot for about 10 years. And then I noticed that he was looking at me like, well, maybe you're not that bad. Maybe you're kind of cute. And that within 2 or 3 minutes, the whole deal was done. Without a word ever being said about it, it was just like, this is obvious. This is going to happen. And Dennis said to me, he says, so that's your dream boy. And I just looked at him like, yeah.
Once I lived the life of a millionaire. Had lots of money, didn't have a care. Carried my friends out for a good time, buying bootleg liquor, champagne and wine. Then I began.
That's it.
Take this ring.
As a sign of my love and fidelity.
As a sign of my love and fidelity.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
I'd like to present to you Mr. and Mrs. Khaury.
By the time he married his third wife, Sue Gardner, the national spotlight had long faded. In recent years, Tim had found new popularity among the retro music crowd.
I don't know how many people have ever had an opportunity to see a living legend. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, let's have a big round of applause for Tiny Tim!
The first time he got looked at medically after we met, they said that they thought he had 5 to 7 years. And then he started to get worse, and they started to talk about 3 to 5 years. And then they started talking about 1 to 3 years. And in the end, the doctor said, I cannot guarantee that he will walk out of the office.
Please welcome now with me, Mr. Tiny Tim. Coffee during the show, well, it's because,
When I heard that he had a heart attack, I tracked him down in a hospital in Massachusetts, and we communicated fairly often for the last few months. It became a very warm conclusion.
I had wanted him to stay home for a long time. He had promised me, but I didn't realize how addicted he was to performing and to the applause and the audience and all that stuff.
Control your destiny, or someone else will. It's not over until I win.
I don't know where to start with that day. He colored his hair that day and he was in a horrible mood.
Tiny came up these stairs, proceeded straight ahead because he was not feeling well that night. And he sat down and rested to just take it easy.
Tiny Tim Khaury.
A small bandstand was set up against this wall, and Tiny was pretty much front and center, which would have put him in approximately this position.
The set was very short. He did sing another song that I had never heard of, I'll Have You to Remember. When I grow too old to dream, the song will live in my heart. So kiss me, my sweet, and so let us part. In which I think he was consciously saying goodbye to me. I think he knew that he was not going to walk out of that room alive.
Miss Sue was sitting way in the rear of the room.
And then he sang a very short version of Tiptoe.
So when Tiny all of a sudden grabbed his heart, and Sue, as I get it from the back of the room, kind of mouthed to him, "Are you okay?" He kind of went, "No." At that point, she got up, charged forward, and that's when he pretty much knew he was collapsing and fell into her arms.
And he very gracefully knelt down. And I think that he was gone right then.
It sure is good to see you, but I would have liked to hold you.
An icon of the 60s died this weekend.
He tiptoed into America's heart nearly 30 years ago.
One-of-a-kind entertainer. And the last sounds he heard were applause.
Oh, to the next life, when our roads touch again, I'll be able to love you.
Eccentricity, idiosyncrasy, quirkiness. Tiny was a genuine, joyful, pear-shaped celebration of all three. He was perhaps the kindest man I ever met. Tiny, may your good works never die.
Some celebrities walk around like they're the sun and the moon, and he just wasn't that way. He was wonderful.
I feel like I'm Tiny when I say this, but I feel like his spirit enters me.
Eternal troubadour, Tiny Tim.
He was like a turtle with no shell. He was so honest. He was so open and out there, and he was like a child.
I hope that they understand why I am the way I am, because I use it as an excuse sometimes. I'll say,
I can't help it. My dad was Tiny Tim. It's not my fault.
He really should get some credit as being the first sort of androgynous rock and roll era star, particularly in the next generation. People like David Bowie and Prince and Boy George, they must have ingested some of Tiny Tim.
People either got it or they didn't. But there it was. He was beautiful.
Years ago they said I'd never make it. They tried to stick a pin in my balloon. They said I was too strange, that my dreams were all in vain. But they said the same about Man on the Moon. I knocked on doors and I sang my songs, and each day they'd say, hey, go away and don't come back. But I crusaded until I made it. Nothing's impossible if you try. So have your dreams, go on and sing your song. There's nothing wrong with singing out of tune. If people laugh and say your dream can never be, just think of me and Man on the Moon. And just a while back, you'd be a bit cracked if you would talk about a walk out on the moon. And who'd believe it? We finally reached it. Nothing's impossible if you try. So have your dreams, go on and sing your song. There's nothing wrong with singing out of tune. If people laugh and say your dream can never be, just think of me, just think of me and Man on the Moon.
Oh, a story I have to tell you. Neil Cassidy and I kidnapped him from the mafia. Mr. Rocco fell asleep and we snatched him. We're driving up the West Side Highway in New York to the Cloisters with Neil Cassidy driving the car and Neil and Tiny singing Bing Crosby duets as we drove along. Every now and then you go, oh, Mr. Cassidy, not so fast. Oh, relax, Tiny, everything's cool. And I'm just gonna roll this joint and drive with my knee. And oh, God, what a hoot. I can't believe you almost didn't get that one.
Tiptoe through the tulips with me. Oh, tiptoe from the garden, by the garden, on the willow tree, and tiptoe through the tulips with me. If flowers will stray, we'll keep the showers away. And if I kiss you in the garden, in the moonlight, will you pardon me and tiptoe through the tulips with me?
Until we meet again, this is Tiny Tim saying to all of my dear friends, wherever you are in TV land, good night.